Over to Asia, where the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's three-nation visit has come to an end. On his last day of the tour, the Prime Minister met with the US Defense Secretary James Mattis in Singapore. The meet came after Mattis lauded India's role in maintaining stability in Afghanistan and the Indo-Pacific region. Notably, the US had renamed the Pacific Command to Indo-Pacific Command in recognition of India's growing significance in the region. Mr. Mattis also said that India and the US share a natural partnership. He has been assuring in the US's allies of America's commitment to the region and its aim of checking China's seemingly inexorable rise in the region. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the Changi naval base earlier in the day. The Indian and Singaporean navies had signed an agreement to have joint naval exercises as well. He also visited the National Orchid Garden. In a special gesture, an orchid was named after Mr. Modi in Singapore. It was displayed behind the head table during the banquet lunch hosted by Singapore's Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong. Mr. Modi also unveiled the Gandhi plaque marking the immersion site of Mahatma Gandhi's ashes at Clifford Pier. During his first engagement of the day, Mr. Modi met Singapore's former Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong. Now, WION's political editor Karthikeya Sharma gets you the key takeaways from Mr. Modi's visit to Singapore and the region. Listen in.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi's three-day nation tour had one specific aim in mind, and that was to establish cultural, economic and strategic affairs connect with Southeast Asia. And it is for this reason, in his keynote address in Shangri-La Dialogue, he used the word ASEAN a number of times and made ASEAN as a pivot center of what Americans now have described as Indo-Pacific by changing the name of their Pacific Command to Indo-Pacific. Prime Minister both in Jakarta, Singapore and in a short trip to Malaysia emphasized the importance of relationship which India enjoys with Southeast Asia. It's simple. 70% of the Indian trade is with Southeast Asian economies. The new Indian diaspora is in Australia and Southeast Asia. India is not connected to West Asia as it used to be. For past, or I would say last 1,000 years, the interface of South Asia was with West Asia. But that interface has changed completely in the last 100 years. Now interface takes place with Southeast Asia. And India acknowledges that and recognizes the potential it holds. And for this very reason, it made special effort to touch base with powerful Southeast Asian economies. So one can say that not only this visit was about the rising hegemon of Asia, China, but was also about India's role, India's place in the world and how India can reshape, reorder or help sort out issues of Southeast Asia, which is reeling under a muscular foreign policy of Chinese establishment. With camera person Vikram Singh, Karthikeya Sharma from Singapore for WION.
Now, speaking at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, the US Defense Secretary Jim Mattis hailed India's role in maintaining peace and security in Afghanistan and the Indo-Pacific region at large. At the same time, he called out China's policy in the South China Sea. General Mattis slammed China for the policy, saying that no particular nation can dominate the Indo-Pacific region. He said that China's policy goes against the US's policy of open seas. He went on to warn China of bringing into check its growing aggression in the South China Sea and asserted that the region is on America's priority list.
China's policy in the South China Sea stands in stark contrast to the openness of our strategy. It promotes what our strategy promotes. It calls in to question China's broader goals. The U.S. will continue to pursue a constructive, results-oriented relationship with China. Cooperation, whenever possible, will be the name of the game, and competing vigorously where we must. Of course, we recognize any sustainable Indo-Pacific order has a role for China. The Department of Defense remains steadfastly committed to working with Taiwan to provide the defense articles and services necessary to maintain sufficient self-defense consistent with our obligations set out in our Taiwan Relations Act.
Earlier, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi also referred to China's hegemony in the South China Sea. The Indian Prime Minister referred to the need for free passage in open waters to ensure peace in the region.
I'm here to say that the future we seek does not have to be as elusive as Shangri-La, that we can shape this region in our collective hopes and aspirations. Nowhere is it more apt to pursue this than in Singapore. The great nation shows us that when the oceans are open, the seas are secure, countries are connected, the rule of law prevails, and the region is stable, nations, small and large, prosper as sovereign countries.